Hello, everyone, and welcome from where you're listening in from, tuning in from around the world. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for attending our online seminar series, the International Perspectives on Corpus Technology for Language Learning seminar series, in what is likely to be our final episode under this particular format. That doesn't mean that we're going away forever, but we are going to have a rethink about with the direction of the series and where we're going to go into next year. Whatever it is, it's going to be something that is going to be fun. It's going to be something that's going to be useful and practical to you all. So bear with us while we work out the best way to reach out to you next year. But certainly tonight we have saved one of the best till last. And that is Dr. Elena Cotos, who's Associate Professor of Applied Linguistics, the founding director of the Center for Communication Excellence in the Graduate College at Iowa State University. And Dr. Cotos today is going to talk to us about work that she's been doing on corpus and genre-based automated writing evaluation for scientific writing. So combining two quite popular areas of research in writing, that of corpora and automated writing evaluation. And I'm sure that we're all really interested to hear what Dr. Cotos has to say about this. Just before we begin tonight's talk, as is customary with our universities here in Australia and also partners in Brazil as well, that we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet, both here in person and virtually. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to the country while recognizing their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. So tonight, as I mentioned, we have a fantastic speaker who's published a range of articles on this topic, some of which have been incredibly inspiring to my own research. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Dr. Elena Cotos tonight on season 3, episode 10 now of our seminar series. Dr. Cotos investigates genre writing in the disciplines corpus and genre-based writing pedagogy, automated writing evaluation, and linguistic realizations of academic discourse for applied natural language processing applications. So every possible hat that you could wear, Elena is probably wearing it. She currently serves as book review editor for English for Specific Purposes and is the principal investigator for the Research Writing Tutor Project and global online and massive open courses offered in partnership with FHI 360 and American English e-teacher program, US Department of State. So an incredibly busy person, but not too busy to give us our talk for today. And it's my great pleasure now to hand over to Dr. Elena Cotos. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful introduction, Peter, and thank you certainly for inviting me to present in this wonderful series, very impactful series. Like I said, I've been directing my students to watch the videos and to attend when they can. The time difference doesn't work very well for Iowa. Like I said, it's 5 a.m. here. But I did see we have a student from our program who joined this morning. Fabriana,
Wow.
good morning.
Give that student give them some good marks for effort.
Absolutely. Well, and I would like to say thank you to everyone who joined this last seminar in the series, and greetings to everyone all over the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. I guess at this point I can share my screen. Is that what we do? Okay. 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 Can you all see my screen?
We are all good.
Okay, wonderful. So as you know, the topic of my presentation today is corpus and genre-based automated writing evaluation. I hope that many of those who attended or viewed the previous presentations will see an interesting continuation in this one. And here's a preview of what I want to cover today. First, a brief background for genre-based automated writing evaluation. Then a more detailed description of the roles that a large multidisciplinary corpus played in the development and implementation of an exemplar for scientific writing, which is called the research writing tutor. Then I will draw on my research to talk about the learning potential and impact of this tool on the context, in the context of EAP instruction. I will conclude with some thoughts about future prospects for development and evaluation of research, and then we'll be looking forward to your questions and comments. So let me begin with a brief general information about automated writing evaluation, just to bring the fields together. So the core function of automated writing evaluation technology in general is its computational ability to evaluate and score written prose. In its more than 60-year history, this field has grown from standalone engines for automated scoring to complex interactive systems that support writing. Noting that a comprehensive history of automated writing evaluation has yet to be written, Hazelton and colleagues delineated AW tools into 3 generations based on how technological capabilities developed over time, of course. The first generation emerged in the 60s and is represented by the famous Project Essay Grade tool, which aimed to address the challenge of time-intensive grading of student writing. Then in the 80s, the second generation of AW appeared. It was also assessment driven and included tools that provide immediate individualized feedback that helps, again, teachers to respond to student writing in formative ways. The third generation has expanded the ability of AW technology to analyze student writing across academic disciplines and across writing genres. Genre-based tools pertain to the third generation, a generation that has made a left turn, as Jill Burstein and colleagues put it. In other words, it has shifted automated writing evaluation from treating the writing construct as quantifiable features, which in the aggregate embody the meaning of writing for the assessment, to treating the writing construct as the rhetorical ability to integrate an understanding of audience, context, and purpose, the ability to effectively employ multiple writing strategies, the ability to learn and use the conventions appropriate to a specific genre of writing. And you can see some key concepts really key to me, and I believe to many of us, underlined in this quote from Perelman. I must also say that genre-based AWE is a domain of inquiry and practice motivated by the need to help students in EAP contexts acquire specialized genres of their target disciplinary communities. And I'm sure many of you in the audience teach in EAP context. Genre-based automated writing evaluation involves the design and pedagogical uses of digital writing tools that give automated feedback based on the conventions of a target genre. And unlike traditional AWE, genre-based feedback is grounded in ESP genre theory, which we're all familiar with, and operationalizes the characteristics of genres in terms of swales in rhetorical moves and steps. We have witnessed the appearance of genre-based AW tools in the past decade, but there are still a few of them. They're all focused primarily on genres and part genres of scientific writing. The tool that first opened the scene was Anthony Lawrence's AntMover, which is not a feedback tool per se, but is able to depict the move structure of research article abstracts. iAid and RWT are tools that I authored. iAid served as the prototype designed and evaluated to obtain proof of concept evidence, which was needed for the current full-fledged Corpus-based RWT platform, RWT provides feedback on both moves and steps for all the sections of the research article. Two other tools, Academic Writing Analytics and its current successor, ACA Writer from the University of Technology, Sydney, are different in that they provide feedback highlighting only the so-called rhetorically salient sentences. And what is common to all these tools is that their back-end engines use text classification approaches to analyze the rhetorical traits of the target genres. For example, naive Bayes classifier, support vector machine classifier, and a rule dependency parser. As you can see from the dates of the work cited on the slide, the ant mover is the pioneer that gave rise, in my opinion, to genre-based AWE. It is precisely this tool that inspired so much of my own scholarship and practice. And I should also say that my work was motivated by Professor Elena Cotos. Those of you who attended her presentation last week heard about the academic writing course she developed when she was at Iowa State. I was a graduate student at the time, and Professor Cotos gave me the opportunity to teach that course. In essence, with that, she showed me the potential of corpus-based and genre-based pedagogy, and that drove my desire to enhance the teaching of scientific writing with genre-based automated writing evaluation technology. So from here on, I will transition to the main part of my presentation, which will focus on the research writing tutor as an exemplar of genre-based automated writing evaluation. I'm sure many of you agree that teaching scientific writing implies a fusion of dimensions. The overlap of these dimensions increases with the acquisition of genre knowledge, which enables the writer to create texts representative of a given genre that are congruent with the values of the target sociodisciplinary practice. So in my early conceptualization of genre-based AWE, I knew that if I wanted to design such a tool, I should account for the following core components of genre knowledge: writer's self-awareness and metacognitive knowledge of the rhetorical task, sociodisciplinary awareness about the discourse community, and metapragmatic ability to produce a research article artifact as communicative action with genre-specific language choices, which are appropriate to the expectations of the disciplinary discourse community. So the question was, how do I create a feedback tool that is responsive to all this? As an applied linguist, of course, I appealed to the strengths of Corpora because a corpus is not only an invaluable tool for genre analysis, but also a powerful methodology technology for determining how disciplines use language in their major genres. So let's see how corpus played two major roles in the development of RWT. The role of a source of language data, discourse descriptive data, and as a material for the design of various features of the tool. As we all know, there are numerous studies describing the conventions of the research article genre in various disciplines. However, at the time, none offered cross-disciplinary move-step models devised for each section of the research article. With my research team, we took this as a challenge and embarked on a large-scale analysis of a corpus of 30 disciplines, each discipline being represented by 30 texts. Without going into much detail, I'll sample some essential highlights that were important for the development of RWT. The most important outcome of our analysis was devising cross-disciplinary move-step models for each section. And you can see this summarized in the table. It's very small, but you can access this in one of our articles. Genre-based pedagogy in the EAP tradition that we all are in needs to be explicit, and all things that are taught must be defined. That's why we describe the moves and steps in terms of their rhetorical intent, content realizations, and linguistic realizations. The example you see here is for a step called explicating findings of the discussion section. We used our cross-disciplinary framework to annotate the whole corpus. Apart from determining the frequency of move step occurrences, our analysis also revealed that irrespective of the discipline, writers make use of most of the steps, to a different extent, of course. This is an example to show what it's like in the method section. So in the first graph, you see the distribution of the moves in the corpus for each discipline. And in the second one, you see the distribution of steps in one of the moves of the method section. And this type of data was important for the pedagogical aspect of the RWT. The data on this slide and on the slides previous to this one. Further, to operationalize the corpus findings and to generate feedback, we use the annotated corpus to extract anagrams with high odds ratios, which indicate their likelihood to appear in particular moves and steps. What you can see here is a table with anagrams for the introduction section, one step from each move, claiming centrality for move 1, highlighting a problem from move 2, and announcing principal outcomes from move 3. And just looking at some of these, I'm sure you will recognize them as signals of these particular step functions. So we use this kind of anagrams for computational modeling so that each move or step, I should say move and step, in students' text can be automatically identified. In a nutshell, computational modeling entails a general inductive process that builds a text classifier by learning the anagram-based characteristics of the moves and steps in the annotated corpus. As I mentioned before, we use the support vector machines approach. The classifier predicts the moves and steps that new text should have in order to be classified similarly to human annotation. In the case of RWT, each sentence from a text goes through the move classifier. The move classifier predicts a move, then it passes the sentence on to the step classifier. And the step classifier then predicts a step within that move. Then the identified move and step for a given sentence, these predictions are translated to different types of feedback. Here's an example of how a new sentence is processed and represented for move classification. First, the sentence is divided into anagrams and matched with the existing feature set. Then the anagrams are represented as Boolean values, meaning 1 if the anagram was found in the feature set, and 0 if it was not found in the feature set. Based on the features represented as 1, the classifier makes a decision as to which move the sentence belongs to. Now, moving on to the role of the corpus as material for feature design. As you can see on this visual, the conceptual design of RWT comprises several theoretical perspectives. ESP genre theory, systemic functional linguistics. Are we okay? All right, I'll move forward.
Yeah, my apologies.
No, not a problem. Okay, so back to theoretical grounding. Cognitive writing models, skill acquisition theory, and SLA in interactionist hypothesis. The tool is designed such that each feature is justified by relevant theoretical tenets and is that expected to be helpful in theoretically anticipated ways. So we didn't design the features just because we could. We really wanted to align them with theory, and the check marks here indicate that the corpus enabled the design of empirically and theoretically grounded features. Again, I won't spend time going through each box in this visual. I hope participants will be able to go back to the slides and look more closely, but I will explain a bit more in a few minutes how features use the corpus. Now with this one, I wanted to say that RWT contains 3 modules, and you can see the ramifications. One module is called Understand Writing Goals. The second one, Explore Published Writing. And the third one, Analyze My Writing. Each module has features intended to create the learning conditions that are mapped on this slide. With this mapping, I am giving you another summative view where the check marks show the different ways in which the results of corpus analysis or the corpus itself were applied. Like I said, you can come back to these slides and examine them later, and now I'll just move on to demonstrating some key features from each module. The Understand Writing Goals features a series of mini lectures and reading materials for multimodal scaffolding, where each move and step are explained and exemplified. So this is what I like to call the learning module. The Explore Published Writing module exhibits the annotated corpus, which is searchable for discipline and research article section structure, showing each move as color-coded. When a sentence is clicked on or hovered over, a pop-up with the name of the step appears, as you can see here in the screenshot. This part of the module depicts target disciplinary writing, presenting authentic text as enhanced input, and this is a necessary learning condition for noticing patterns. Another part of this module is what I call a functional concordancer. By hierarchically selecting a discipline, section, move, and step from respective drop-down menus, the students can retrieve all the examples of a search step within a corpus. The emphasis here is on students' identification of language choices that convey the rhetorical intent of the steps. The Analyze My Writing module is more complex as it offers different types of feedback that students can use to iteratively revise and resubmit their drafts. Let's take a closer look. The feedback maintains the color coding, this time to depict the move composition of a student's draft, just like the Explore Published Writing module depicts the move composition of the text in the corpus. Along with that, the second form of feedback appears as the student hovers over each sentence or clicks on a sentence. Connected to the move color coding of the draft, this feedback then takes the form of interactive comments or clarifying questions about the rhetorical intent of a given sentence. So it's section level feedback that is color coded and sentence level feedback that has these step specific prompts. Continuity to the sentence level feedback is maintained by the thumbs up, down, or neutral thumbs feature and the note-taking feature. In this example, the student chose thumbs up, indicating agreement with the computer's interpretation of what they meant to do communicatively, and also made an additional constructive comment to be used for further revision, saying, yes, but maybe I should say that new research is needed because it's the research that would provide the critical information needed. I should say that all of the sentence level feedback prompts and student notes can be exported for self-planned revision, and students use that feature. Another type of feedback is both visual and numerical, in that it summarizes the mood distribution in the student's draft with range bars and pie charts. Here, the draft is compared with the text from the corpus in the student's discipline. This feature of the feedback is expected to increase motivation by allowing students to monitor their writing progress in relation to published writing. Expanding the range bars for each move, RWT further details whether the steps are comparable to the target disciplines. It also draws the students' attention to the steps that may be lacking or may need to be improved. This is goal-oriented feedback, and it aims to help students plan and revise based on textual and patterns, socio-disciplinary patterns in the corpus. In support of writers' cognitive processes, this feedback is hyperlinked with the components of the other two modules. The Learn More links, The Learn More links open a new tab with instructional materials about the step that might need to be scaffolded, and the examples links bring the students to the concordance with step-specific excerpts from the corpus. Now, the RWT is used at Iowa State in a range of contexts, from formal instruction to individual tutoring in our Center for Communication Excellence. I will focus on formal instruction today, which is a graduate course called Preparing Publishable Thesis Chapters. The units of this course are built around introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion writing, and include different tasks. I already mentioned the videos and reading materials in RWT's Understanding Writing Goals module, and those are used for knowledge and comprehension. As a side note, I wanted to say here that the corpus-based findings have been translated to chapters in a recently published book, Preparing to Publish. It is open source, so please feel free to use it. I have the link on the slide and the QR code for those of you who prefer QR codes. Now, the other two modules of the RWT are used for corpus exploration and for analysis and application to writing tasks. Many of you might be interested in what the tasks actually look like, so I thought it might be a good idea to share some of them with you in this presentation. So one task is a top-down exploration of the rhetorical composition of the text from the annotated corpus in the Explore Published Writing module. You can see the guiding questions for students' exploration on this slide, but again, I'm not going to read them in the interest of time. Excuse me, another task, excuse me, which is also in the tradition of data-driven learning, is a bottom-up analysis using the move or step concordancer in RWT. The students are asked to examine the concordance lines showing sentences annotated as particular steps and to identify expressions that are indicative of the functions of those steps. Students also compile their findings into a list of step-specific examples, which they think can help them effectively write their own steps. Now, after completing these corpus exploration tasks, the students apply their observations to drafting and revising their drafts based on the feedback of the RWT Analyze My Writing module. There's too much text here on the slide, but I wanted to give you the full list of directions. So please feel free to come back to this slide and read the directions for this task. Okay, now I reached the third part of my talk, and I will switch to research on the uses of RWT in the context of the course that I just described. It would take me, I guess, forever to present this strand of research in the traditional IMRD way, so I'll just highlight select evidence from several studies. I thought it makes sense to begin with the effects of the corpus explorations with RWT. The question is, does that work? And not surprising, that does work. And there's a lot of literature that demonstrates that data-driven learning works. The features designed for those tasks can raise students' genre awareness and increase their understanding of disciplinary writing conventions. Importantly here, studies show that when completing the top-down and bottom-up tasks, both native speakers and non-native speakers notice discipline-specific patterns in rhetorical composition, as well as functional language expressing specific rhetorical intent. Their notes about the distribution and amount of moves, the presence and order of steps, and multifunctionality of discourse can serve as guidelines for research article writing in their own discipline. And that's how they use those notes. The expressions and step-specific lists that they compile are mostly representative. And by representative, I mean those language choices indeed are characteristic of the respective steps. As for the feedback, research shows that it can trigger cognitive engagement, enabling a learning revision cycle whereby students focus on discourse form, that is, on the rhetorical composition of the text, notice that their written draft was different from their internal representation of the text, reflect on intended functional meaning, realize that the meaning needs to be expressed with explicit functional language, and use more appropriate language choices to construct new functional meaning. In this sequence, each action is conditioned by the effect of the preceding stage. And overall, the feedback can help students develop a meaning-oriented internal representation of their text. Integrative uses of automated feedback and other features can enable students to tailor their own interaction strategies, allowing the necessary degree of learner control when using the tool. This figure shows a breakdown of the time students spend interacting with features of the RWT. The second figure depicts the variation in individual students' interactions with the features of the tool. Here, each color segment indicates individual students' interaction with a certain feature, so you can see that each student proceeded in various ways. Yet, the overall sequence of their continued interaction exhibited 4 identifiable patterns. Another important effect is related to the impact of feedback on students' revision processes. This figure and the examples are based on stimulated recall data from which 6 themes and respective sub-themes emerged. These thematic categories suggest that the feedback can trigger fundamental metacognitive processes during revision, specifically reflection, text processing, problem solving, strategizing, and text production in the RWT environment. The student's interaction with the feedback can also have an impact on their actual text modifications. And this is what we really want to see, right? It helps students transfer the knowledge they gained from the corpus exploration tasks to their drafting and revising. Statistical and comparative analysis of student first and last drafts showed that the students modified their text both globally and locally. Globally, they made substantial changes to the rhetorical composition of their drafts. The last drafts improved significantly, and that was proportionately approximating the distribution of moves and steps in the disciplinary text from their corpus. This can be linked to the goal-orienting comparative nature of the graphical numerical feedback that I showed you earlier, as well as to the on-demand availability of the concordancer, which they made a lot of use of. Additionally, the last drafts contain local text modifications. Prevalent here were content changes, that is, adding or modifying ideas needed to accomplish communicative goals. Second to that were modifications in step-related functional language. And interestingly, grammar, syntax, and mechanics were also edited. Such modifications are expected when using more traditional AWE tools like Criterion and Grammarly. So it is encouraging to see that automated rhetorical feedback can indirectly support text production processes that are relative to local aspects of writing. Overall, the results of several studies indicated that corpus-based automated feedback can exert impact at different levels, from cognitive to pragmatic and to effective and intrinsic. The advantage of genre-based feedback, as opposed to traditional era-based AWE feedback, is that it triggers focus on functional meaning, which is key to positive impact. Students may begin interacting with the feedback in sporadic ways, but once they start focusing on what they actually want to do in each of their sentences, the positive effects are aligned with deliberate thinking, effective revision strategies, and motivation to continue to improve their writing. Before I conclude, I would like to address some future directions. And considering that few genre-based AWE tools are available to date, this is an area ripe for investigation and scalability. Its advancement certainly calls for a continued research agenda that I plan to continue and would be happy if other people do as well. So let me share some directions for future development and evaluation research that I have in mind. For future development, we can further leverage the knowledge we have from Corpora as data. For example, future feedback on move sequencing can be designed to reflect not only disciplinary patterns, but also variation, which you can see in these heat maps. The heat maps show the move structure of 30 result sections in 3 disciplines: animal science, applied linguistics, and molecular, cellular, and developmental biology. Each row represents a text, and each color segment represents the order of the moves. So you can see there's a lot of variation that RWT currently does not capture. And it would be great to work in this direction and potentially develop move sequencing feedback. Another informative piece of corpus evidence is that steps are not randomly distributed in this course. What these figures here show is that there is some structure in the order of the steps. Each figure is a matrix that encodes the probability of transitioning from one step to another. For example, the first row of the matrix for introduction sections excuse me, indicates that a sentence of step 1 is most likely going to be followed by another sentence of step 1. Step 1 being claiming centrality. The next most likely step to follow step 1 is step 2, which is reviewing previous research. Some steps are more likely to follow other specific steps, while some transitions from step to step are almost non-existent. For example, the probability of step 1 being followed by step 16 is 0. And step 1 again is claiming centrality. Step 16 is in move 3, outlining the structure of the paper. This type of corpus-based evidence, again, could potentially be translated to feedback on step sequencing. Furthermore, multidimensional analysis of moves can inform new forms of feedback on move-specific linguistic features, and you can see some examples on this slide. Such feedback would bridge the function-form gap, as Moreno and Swales call it in their 2018 article. And Bethany Gray at Iowa State, with Jordan Smith and another colleague, we've been working on this for quite some time, trying to figure out what is the best approach to do multidimensional analysis on move data. Now, a few ideas about evaluation research. This one is related to feedback. So future evaluation research, I believe, needs to focus on providing more explanatory evidence to help teachers better understand the nature of automated feedback. And that kind of research will also help augment and improve feedback accuracy. So just imagine this simple scenario. In the sentence level feedback, RWT says, you are likely highlighting a problem. And this likely means, well, it looks like this is what you're doing, but I'm not entirely sure. So students may wonder, and they do, why is that? Teachers would also want to have an answer so that they know how to explain this to their students. I didn't have a full answer, although I know how the feedback is generated, where it comes from. But I thought I would know better if I knew what's going on in the actual brain classifier of the RWT. So I know what goes into the classifier. I know what comes out of the classifier, but I don't know what's happening inside the classifier. So this motivated me to look for ways to dissect the output of the classifier and try to interpret why it does what it does, including being accurate and including making errors, classification errors. And this final slide is really text heavy. I apologize for that, but I decided to leave it like this, hoping that at least one of these general questions for future genre-based AW research will spark your interest. So these ones I will actually read aloud. To what extent can genre-based AW feedback accurately reflect students' genre writing competence? How helpful is genre-based AW for revision practice as genre writing improvement? How do students use this technology, and what strategies are most effective? What kind of and how much training do students and teachers need to use this technology effectively? How can teachers assess the effectiveness of genre-based AW implementations in their classrooms? What are the strengths and limitations of this technology compared to other digital writing tools? And how can different strands of research on feedback, usefulness, and impact address limitations and further inform the advancement of this field? How can we most appropriately operationalize genre constructs to design actionable feedback? That is, feedback providing the guidance needing to improve. How can the functionality and output of the engines be evaluated and interpreted in meaningful ways for teachers and students? How can different theories, research results, and practical needs be best integrated in the design of new genre-based AW tools for a range of target contexts? So, like I mentioned, we really only have academic genres, and it would be wonderful to see this technology extrapolated to other genres within EAP and ESP. And finally, what principles should be developed to scale genre-based automated writing evaluation from individual genres to genre systems spanning different contexts and discourse communities? And here are the references that I used. Thank you very much. I am at 5:45, met my time mark. So thank you for listening and watching. Questions are more than welcome, questions and comments.
Thanks so much, Elena. And of course, our audience is so incredibly receptive to all of the really useful information that you passed on about what is a fantastic system, a real kind of state-of-the-art, cutting-edge way of combining all of these different technologies into something that is going to be of great use to the students in your program, and who knows, maybe later outside into the wild world. We would like to all have the opportunity to use something like this in our own contexts. And I guess we're going to kick off the questions here. I've got a couple of questions of my own, I guess. And the first one is building on what I just said. Is like, are there any plans to take this out of your current context and provide maybe some kind of workable demo that could be shared perhaps in the future?
This is a great question. Thank you for asking it. I get this question again and again, and every time I feel bad to say, unfortunately, Iowa State has restrictions, intellectual property, and even the corpus itself. Even though the corpus was manually annotated and pedagogically mediated in the tool, they don't feel comfortable releasing that. So that said, I am planning to pursue funding, because you can't really do much without funding. This was developed with Iowa State internal funding. It was a grant that we have at Iowa State. It's called a grant by the Computational Advisory Committee, and these are computer fees that the students at Iowa State pay, and so that money goes into certain projects that should benefit students. So back to the idea of future funding, what I would like to do is to at least, if I cannot release the explore published writing module with the actual corpus for data-driven learning, I would like to release at least the feedback module.
Yeah, I think, yeah, even if the actual data and so on is protected by IP, you know, at least an alternative version. It's kind of like if you take RWT as proof of concept, and then there could be opportunities there. I know that we're all quite jealous and we'd all like to sample that ourselves. Let me get on to some of the questions then from the audience. And this is in relation to students' proficiency and whether the computer is able to identify sentences that may sometimes border on gibberish.
This is a very interesting, wonderful question. And oftentimes within the field of automated writing evaluation in general, criticism arises as to, well, you know, these tools are not human and it's easy to trick them. So with regards to the RWT, I guess it would not do very well if it's gibberish. However, the students that use the tool are at relatively advanced level of language proficiency. These are students who, well, they're graduate students at Iowa State, and just to be admitted to Iowa State, they need to have a certain level of English language proficiency at admissions. And then when they're at Iowa State taking the course further, and typically they take the course not in their, you know, not at the beginning of their academic programs, but later on when they've actually conducted research and they have data and results to write about. So their level of proficiency is relatively high. Not to say they don't make any language errors, they do, but I've never seen in our data, because RWT's database records everything. So that's how you know, we get information about their use behaviors, interactions with features, you know, number of submissions, and so on. And so, and actually, the actual revisions, text edits that they make. So I have not seen in the data a single instance of trying to play with the system. I guess they take it seriously.
Okay. And it's interesting as well that unlike most EAP provision, it's not specifically designed for freshman students. It's for students who've been there for a while and are learning or in the process of dealing with the disciplinary discourses as after presumably initial EAP training. And there are really not many resources out there that deal with that kind of specific learner. This is something that we were lamenting about for our own university this week in discussions with senior management in terms of ongoing support for students after the first year. So this is a really interesting take on that. Okay, I'm going to move on. We got a question from Victor, who asks about lexical bundles. Is there any kind of genre-based information on lexical bundles that is can be found within the system?
And thank you for this question too. I should have put this on one of my slides. So currently, like I said, the system is operating on anagrams, and there's a reason for that. When choosing what kind of text classification approach to use, we tried different methods, and it just turned out that the SVM model works best with anagrams, which is similar to the approach that Anthony Lawrence has taken, except it was not exactly the same, but still anagrams. Anyway, back to lexical bundles. Viviana Cortez and I worked on doing lexical bundles analysis on one of the sections, the method sections of the corpus. We were particularly interested in the methods to see, because it's the methods and results, in fact, that vary much more across the disciplines. So we had very interesting results there. We had some lexical bundles that were very long. And this is not something that you see, let's say, in the introduction section, right? So ideally, we would want to find a way to maybe complement the feedback. So if you remember, I said there is feedback at step level where it says, well, you don't have enough of claiming centrality, for example, or you're lacking highlighting a problem. It would be helpful to complement that with some lexical bundle information from the corpus. So again, we can do wonders with so much research. The corpus is really a gold mine. So I guess with more funding, we could do definitely more feature generation. So thank you for the question. Viviana would appreciate this question too.
Thanks. Okay, I've got a couple of kind of similar, well, questions kind of touching on the same thing. The first part is from Hank, the other is Intan Pradita, and it's about the articles that were fed in to the system as the feeder for the patterns. In terms of whether these articles were considered as representative on the whole of the moves and steps maybe that you're trying to analyze, and was there any information about the articles, like who wrote them? For example, are they mainly produced by perhaps by native speakers of English, or the question specifically asks about whether there are also texts including by non-native speakers of English as well?
Yes, great question. So the corpus, compiling the corpus was the first big step. And of course, we were trying to do our best to select a corpus that is not only representative, but of high quality. So what we did to collect the corpus is we worked with faculty in each of those disciplines. So we had a faculty consultant who helped us identify top journals in the field, and then sample papers from those journals. So per discipline, we had between 3 to 5 journals that we extracted articles from. Those articles, so they gave us the names of the journals. We extracted papers, then they evaluated them holistically, but still they evaluated them in terms of quality of writing and quality of scholarship. And so some of the papers did not meet those criteria and were replaced with other ones that were evaluated highly. We had a requirement, 5 of the 30 had to be rated as exemplary, okay? We needed to use those as a starting point for developing the models, the frameworks, move step models for each section. Now, were they written by native speakers only or native and non-native speakers? Both native and non-native. And this was not really difficult in this era of international publishing. So we have representation that, yeah, is not only discipline specific, but also high quality and written by authors with various language backgrounds.
Yeah, thanks for answering that question.
I will also, just as a side note, I will say here, I did not mention, but RWT also has a module where the original articles are displayed. So if the students want to see the original article, its full structure, how the visuals, you know, how the legends, we don't give feedback on legends. We don't give feedback on things like that, right? So they do have the originals if they want to look there.
Yeah, and that's really going to be super useful for that added context if necessary. Okay, a question, and I think we've got time for 2 more questions here. This question's from Fabriana. It says, sometimes as a writer, we intend to say A, and the research writing tutor may detect it as B. So then is it possible for a writer to kind of discount the suggestion given by the RWT, or to maybe think about the way that they operationalize A as not B, if you know what I mean. So in terms of like the writer's agency to not disregard, but maybe to take the feedback that is given to them into account, but maybe to make a decision not to use it.
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you, Fabriana. So there's several things I should say to answer this question. Part of the reason why the feedback is stated as tentative is because we don't want to make it prescriptive. So we say, it looks like you're doing this here. If the classifier it detects something with lower probability, the classifier may say, is this what you're doing? Are you claiming centrality? So there's various levels of tentativeness with which the feedback is provided. And right below that, there is that thumbs up, thumbs down feature, right? So again, through research prior to developing this particular version of RWT, I saw from the data that students certainly did not always agree with the feedback, which is great, which is really important for them. This really shows that they think about what they're trying to do and really try to convey more effectively what they're trying to do. So that's why we added that feature of thumbs up. Yep, that's what you say. I think that's exactly what I do. There's the neutral, yeah, I'm doing this, but I think I'm also doing this, because in the course we do talk with them about how multifunctional the discourse is and how multiple steps can actually operate in the same sentence. And then that note-taking feature below, they take notes and then they can later export and have a more sort of strategic kind of revision. And whether they decide to follow the feedback or not, again, it's up to them. And we don't just throw the tool at them, right? So we explain what it is. We explain how they can use it. And that slide that had a long, longish kind of text giving the directions for the activity, self analysis and revision with RWT activity tells them that they should be using these features and making their own decisions. So the benefits of actually disagreeing with the feedback is that the students figure out what they're actually trying to do communicatively, and it also prompts them to confirm their linguistic hypothesis, speaking in SLA terms, by looking at the concordance lines and seeing what language is used there. And oftentimes what they do is they realize that, oh, okay, I really am not saying it explicitly, so I might need to use this other language. Or they can also realize that their interpretation of what a step means is not what they think. So they may say, oh, I misunderstood what proposing general hypothesis is. I maybe confused that with research hypotheses. Yes. So something like that.
And I guess a final question, just following up from that one from Hank, is does the system learn when students then are rejecting the feedback? I think Grammarly has a function where if you keep clicking kind of X on the comment, then it won't give it back to you. Is there a function like that within? Yeah.
Again, wonderful question, really. And I know Hoover does that. We decided not to do this for RWT because we're using it with students who are only learning the genre. And so they don't always, just the fact that they agree or disagree, it's not enough and not always accurate data to be passing on to the classifier. Yeah, we carefully consider that. We tried just, looking at their choices, what they're saying, And in many cases, especially initially when they only begin using the tool, they don't, let's say, if we ask them to self-annotate, because in a sense that would be self-annotating their own text. And if we ask them to do that, it would not always be accurate. So we decided not to implement a feature like that.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking our questions. I think they were some very good questions and lots of food for thought going forward. And again, thank you so much to our speaker today, Professor Elena Cotos. And it's a great pleasure to have you on as the final speaker in the current version of this series. And from me to you, I would like not just to Elena, but to all of the attendees in the seminar series, and we've had many hundreds in each talk from around the world over the past 3 seasons. Just a huge thank you for the attendance, for sharing the details of the seminars on social media, for having watch parties, for watching the video recordings after the sessions. Thank you so much for your interest in this series, for your continued support. There are people in the audience that I've seen at every single talk since day one. So not only do you have nothing to do, but you're also incredibly committed, and we thank you for that. We hope you'll watch the videos again, and we'll be mailing all of you soon about whether you have changed something in your teaching and learning practice, or whether you've adopted any of the lessons or the tools or the research that we presented in this seminar series. We'll soon be in touch to see how you've been getting on with any of the talks, any of the speakers' content from any of the sessions. So do look out for that. Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap it up here on the recording. We just say thank you in our own way to our speaker again, Dr. Elena Cotos, for tonight's talk. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Elena, for the great talk, the great, highly informative talk. Thank you.